welcome to the ANZ Virtual User Group. We've got a very special guest with us today, Ivy Handoko from Charles Darwin University. First, I need to get the legal slide out of the way. So, as you can see, just a couple of legal disclaimers about any forward-looking information. And before we start, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and we'd also like to extend this respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are here today. So really lucky to have Ivy with us, and also Brianna, who will be doing a bit of a show and tell and some questions later. And on the chat, you'll see that Elise and Kevin will be answering your questions. So little agenda. Ivy's going to tell us a bit about her role, how she got started with Smartsheet, bit of a Q&A, and then we're going to go to product spotlight, an open Q&A and some closing remarks. Little bit of housekeeping. First thing is, feel free to chat, say hello, talk, but please ask questions in our Q&A section, which is on the right-hand side. Click on that, submit your Q&A function. We will have a team answering the questions, and we will also spend some time answering those questions live. So first and foremost, Ivy, can you tell us a little bit about your role and the program that you work for at CDU and how you got started with Smartsheet?
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. My name is Ivy Handoko. I joined the SDX program, which is the Student Digital Experience Program at CDU in January this year. My role is the Project Portfolio Platform Administrator. So I'm the central point of contact for system support to multiple tools across the program. The SDX program is a business-driven transformation program with the goal to create an ecosystem that knows our students and staff to service what they needed when they needed it. So the program aims to remove as much of the administrative burden as possible. At the moment, we have about 29 projects on the roadmap, and it will go through up to 2024, 2025.
Fantastic. One of the things which I'm really curious to understand is, you know, I've been working with you for the past year, and I know how much fantastic stuff you've built in Smartsheet. But what was your knowledge of Smartsheet prior to working at Charles Darwin University?
I've never actually used Smartsheet before I joined CDU, but I have been a heavy user of Excel, and I've used a lot of SharePoint lists, have experience in using Tableau and Power BI. So that means I've got enough database and also data visualization knowledge behind me. So jumping into Smartsheet is actually really good, and yet another platform to learn.
Awesome. So how did you get started, and why did you choose to start working in Smartsheet?
My program director actually used Smartsheet in her previous role, and she was the one that introducing Smartsheet to me. So when I joined the program, we used the available Smartsheet project management template to build our project management tool. So all of them actually done manually, and we kind of do a bit of trial and error to make it work.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know that you did use the templates a lot. Was there anything else that helped you get started with Smartsheet at all?
Yes, the Smartsheet community and the Smartsheet University feature is very, very useful. Internet is obviously great. Like, I watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's a lot of kind of tips on Smartsheet. So it's a bite-sized chunks that I can consume when I need it. I can just Google my questions, and the Smartsheet community answers will pop up. So that's really, really helpful. And also, of course, I've got a good Smartsheet account manager and customer success manager. That's very handy.
And what did you find the hardest thing to learn? You mentioned just then that you took a lot of your Excel and Tableau and SharePoint learnings. What did you find the hardest thing to adapt to in Smartsheet?
Nothing really super hard, providing that, you know, we've got background in Excel in particular, because the formula side of things is very similar. The logic is very similar. I think the setting up of metadata is like the process on how to use Smartsheet to build your dashboard and stuff like that. That needs a bit of getting used to. But like I say, there's a lot of resources out there, so that's great. Another thing is premium apps need to be need a bit of learning before we can use the premium apps.
I think that the metadata point that you just made, Ivy, is a really important one. Can you just expand on, we've got a user group here today, and we'll have lots of people at different levels of using Smartsheet, people who are just starting out to people who are as far along or further along. When you talk about metadata, what do you mean, and why is that so important?
Metadata is essentially like a source where you pick up all your formulas from your base data sheet so that you can surface it into the appropriate reports or dashboard. So knowing how to set it up properly will help you later on to update the information that will then transfer into your dashboard and report. So understanding how the metadata works is really, really important. And that is, I think, the hardest part to understanding how Smartsheet can work.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Ivy. So just understanding what data do I want to capture in my metadata that I then want to surface in dashboards or reports, and is it stuff like tasks outstanding or whatever it may be? Do you have a good example of some metadata that you like to capture normally?
I've got a lot of metadata. So I used a lot of the count of open items, overdue items, who's actually assigned certain tasks that's still open. So all of this information needs to be captured into the metadata sheet, and then we can produce charts and graphs that at a glance we can see all that information, and we can drill it down and create reports that consolidate those particular items that people want to see, rather than looking at the big spreadsheet. Essentially.
Awesome. And what would you say is the best feature that you found initially?
I like the cell link function. The fact that we can actually link multiple sheets into one main sheet, for example, that's very handy to use. So we don't have to copy and paste things from different places. The form creations are great, which means people can enter the data straight into the form and it will land straight into the data sheet, which is amazing. So you don't have to kind of retype the information back into the spreadsheet, eliminate human error, which is great. The reports function is really good as well, because then you can filter it by current user, for example. That means you only see the items that's assigned to you. You remove all the noise. You can just show all the columns that are necessary for that particular report. Again, removing all the noise. And the good thing is you can update the reports and it will transfer straight into the sheet, which is amazing. Yeah,
absolutely. And so it's fair to say that you got up and running with the templates and you had a really good setup with there. And then quite quickly you decided to move on to, so you used a lot of templates initially and you made the decision to go to Control Center. What made you make that decision to go to Control Center?
When I first started, we've got 10 different projects that we're working on. And as we build the templates, we kind of learn along the way. And changes happen, we make adjustments, and I realized that means I have to then apply all those changes into all the different project assets that I've created, which means it's a manual work that needs to be done by someone, and with prone to human errors, etc. So with Control Center in particular, the fact that you can update the column in the template itself and it will populate everything else, for me, that's really, really great. So it can manage the whole portfolio life cycle. So that's amazing.
Yeah, awesome. And we got an example dashboard of one which is live behind you. Do you mind talking through kind of what we're looking at here and kind of what its purpose is, please, Ivy?
Sure. So this is the program reporting dashboard that we built. So as you can see, we've got multiple projects in there, and what I've done here is to provide some review about the project health and project schedule and surface it up in the dashboard so that it can be used in the steering group meeting, for example. At a glance, people can see the snippet of information that's useful for senior management in making decision, and also linking it to the different reports. So for example, if you look at the bottom there, overall summary of the risk, for example, if they look at, okay, we've got 17 program level, let's see what's in there, they can click on the report and have a look at it. We can also surface project status update into this report, which means project manager just put in the status update, and we can then surface it into different reports depending on the audience.
Yeah, awesome. So fair to say that this is a live dashboard which is connecting all of the projects underneath this implementation steering group and giving people a live feed of dynamic data based on what's going on.
Yes.
Without any updates required. I particularly love the project health summary report up there. I think that's really easy matrix to understand and get a really detailed, quick view, but also get quite a lot of information there. So good work. It looks great.
Thank you.
So, I think one of the things which a lot of customers have also gone through, and a lot of users have gone through, is they get to the point where they've done the same thing and they've set up lots of templates and they've maybe taken the program as far as they can manually, and you can get a lot out of it there. But you decide, okay, now's a really good time when we should move to control center. How did you make that business case internally? Kind of what were the key ROIs that the university said, yeah, okay, this makes sense for us to invest in?
So we actually have a couple of immediate candidates that can use the control center. One is to set up the PMO artifacts in the process, and the other one is to manage the university's strategic and core plans. So because we already done a lot of the project management side of things, that's the stage 2 of control center, and I want to understand how the control center work. So we take the core plans project into the control center and see how that goes first, and then we can implement the PMO side of things as well. Awesome. And in terms of ROI, it's very clear that, with having a control center, we speed up delivery of, spinning up project templates, etc. We make sure that all the data and all the templates are consistently captured consistently. Everything is standardized, and then we can minimize human errors. And we can also present live data for management review. So those are the key the key benefits that I kind of present in making the business case.
Yeah, and what did you think the biggest selling points of the University of Control Center was, Ivy?
The efficiency that can be delivered, and also the standardization as well, which means people have a set process to use, and they're all uniform across the university rather than people doing different things at different time, and then it makes it difficult for us to consolidate information.
So once you got approval, obviously you engaged Smartsheet and went through an implementation. Is there anything that you wish you knew now, having gone through the implementation, rolled out lots of control center blueprints yourself? Is there anything that you wish you knew before you built the solutions?
Yes. After working with the consultant in Control Center, I realized building a requirements and user story from the start is really, really useful, and making sure that we document all that. Because when we first started, I kind of built it as I go along, not documenting the requirements or the user story, who's actually using it, who's actually looking at it. So, which means there's a lot of tweaking to be done on the final product. So, knowing that, now it's kind of, okay, before we even start building a solution, let's find out first who's actually consuming all these, what kind of data we need to surface to who, and how do we want to use it, and build those documentation and user stories actually really useful. I know it's a bit laborious, and sometimes people just go, oh, it's another checklist, but it's not. It's actually really useful to actually make sure that we build the right solution and scalable solution.
So understanding what people want to see in those
Yeah.
requirements early on is really important. And I guess that goes back to your metadata point. Kind of, if you can capture those, then you can capture the metadata, and then you can put it all the way through.
And building it from top down is important as well, to find out what is it that management want to see. Yeah. By looking at the top level, okay, these are the information that the dashboard need to show. Then we can then drill down and say, okay, if that's the information they want to see, what kind of data we need to capture.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think has been the biggest benefit of moving to Control Center so far? I mean, we've sort of tackled that probably a little bit already.
Yeah, the main benefit is, like I said, minimize human errors, and also the flexibility, the fact that we can adjust the template as we require it, and the speed as well, when we can spin up a set of artifacts in one hit rather than having to manually adjust that. So that's really great.
And one of the things to note is that you actually moved to Advance. What's been one of the advantages of moving to the Advanced platform as you've rolled out Control Center in your solutions?
I've got a lot of premium apps that's available for me, which is really great. And it's allowed me to kind of customize let's say using dynamic view one is really good. Allow me to create different calendars for using the calendar apps, for example. And I can embed all those widgets into, say, SharePoint intranet site for the university. So that's really great.
Yeah, awesome. And what's your favorite premium app other than Control Center, Ivy?
Data Shuttle is great.
Yeah.
I've been using a lot of Data Shuttle. So that's a really cool app that we can use to update drop-down value based on the value of other sheets, for example. Been using that a lot in the implementation of, if you go to the next slide, you'll see the example that we use the Data Shuttle a lot, which is, this is the student feedback project that we did. So we've got a lot of different sheets in there, but we actually say have a list of calendar for onboarding session. With the Data Shuttle, I can then pick up all the latest or future onboarding session, pop it into the onboarding session registration sheet. That means it will update the drop down, so all the past session is like removed from it, the future session is in there. So you'll see in this dashboard that I created, it's more like a portal dashboard. It gives the admin team for this particular project to go through each step, and we can create a to-do list for them. So we use this dashboard as a user guide to help the team.
Yeah, awesome. And so just to stop on that point for a minute. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at something that you're using a dashboard much more as a portal and a way for a step-by-step guide for the admin team to see what they're doing. So really use of dashboards, not just as a dashboard, but becoming a bit more of a portal for people and a go-to place for people.
Yes.
Awesome. So post-implementation, what's the take-up of the solution been like?
I think it has been great. I've been approached by departments within the university outside the program to kind of create different solutions for them, which is great to see that people realize the benefits of using Smartsheet. So there's some example that I'm currently working on is, working with the risk management team to kind of capture the university-wide strategic risk register and have dashboards created for the biannual risk review, for example. Also helping out the student communication team to set up a process and solution for website with update request. So that has been great. And
do have you had any feedback from the users? What has the user experience been like? Have you had any feedback from those users?
Yes, mostly positive feedback, which is good to hear. people usually like the idea of having the report customized for them. And the fact that it can be done quite easily is really good because, it's the data sheet is there and people want to see just certain things that works for their team. I can just quickly show them how to do it. It's very intuitive as well, the Smartsheet features. So it's been great.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess one of the last questions before we move on to the Q&A is just, do you have any tips or suggestions for other users who are looking to set up the same?
I would say make sure you document the requirements from the start. It will make it easier for us to build it and also make it easier to hand over to the business at the end of the day and help training the people who are actually using it. Also have a think about the top-down view of what is it that people want to see, who are your audiences, the different type of audiences, so that we can customize the way we work. And also important to know who's actually using the data sheet, like who's providing the information, and make sure that we design the sheet to make it easier for people who actually have to input the data into it.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, I think we're going to move on to some more general questions. First question I'm going to ask is, if the changes did not happen, what would the outcomes to the university be, and what was at risk in terms of the program for not having something set up like your PMO?
It is part of the program to have a PMO. At the moment, if we don't have it, then we can't run the project, and people will run it in a different way and in their own way, and maybe we can't surface the information to portfolio level. So for management to make decision will be a bit harder.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. And I've got a question here, Ivy, saying, how big is your Smartsheet development team?
At the moment, it's only just me. Because we only just started, but we are kind of trying to get more and more super users to coming in and work with me together to kind of build the different solutions.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a how-to question here, but more generally, just if you've got a very precise how-to question, best thing to do is to contact your customer success manager or account manager directly and ask them. But Ivy, would you be able to share if the RAG status in the top table is formula driven, or are they all set manually? Sam, do you mind going back a couple of slides if that's okay?
Yeah, for that particular one, it's actually set manually. So the project managers put in the information to indicate what the reg status is for that particular month, for example. But I've used it in other cases where we can set it up so it's got a formula behind the scene to do it. So it's depending on the requirements on how you want the reg to surface, formula can be used if we know exactly what the parameters for it.
And I think that's a good point. So it's about understanding, which goes back to your earlier planning. What are the parameters? What are the requirements? Is this something that we want to be metric driven, or is it something that we want a manual update from managers? And the project schedule summary there, which is using a bit of conditional formatting, is that being set manually, or is that formula driven?
That's being set automatically. So we've got schedule that's been set up, and it will then surface in this way when we put it into the program reporting.
And what was your change management approach of Smartsheet to the CDU employees? Were there any internal activities or programs that you initiated to increase user adoption? For example, internal user groups or lunch and learns?
Yes, we've got. I worked with Elise, who's our customer success manager, to set up this lunch and learn session, which is really great. So we set it up, organized this monthly session that's grouped into 3 different series. So we have the basic series as well for new users coming in. And then the next month, we then have a premium apps deep dive series for people who's using it for a bit already and just wants to know a bit more about premium apps. And then we're going to also launch the control center side of thing as well. So, the plan is to keep doing this. We set it on the team side to encourage people to join and ask questions and share knowledge as we go along. And I'd also just found out that we've got this formula handbook that Smartsheet just launched, which is super excited to have a look at it. It sounds great. You can have a lot of different formulas. That amazing. Look forward to it.
And I know that you told me once, Ivy, that your formulas keep on getting shorter and shorter. The initial formulas were like essays.
Yes.
And now,
yeah, the more I learn, the more I kind of go, oh, okay, you don't have to do this plus this plus this. You can just combine it with like one cool formula, which is always great. Learning is very addictive.
So a couple of shout outs for the formulas for everyone on the call. If you search for Smartsheet Formula Handbook, there is a template which has a list of all of the formulas and some examples and some links and a dashboard. Really great place to look. Also, as Ivy mentioned earlier, the community, the online community. If you want to know how to do something in a formula, type in what you want to do and Smartsheet at the end, and you'll be surprised how many times that's come up in a community and there's answers to those questions. So lots of different ways to find those different solutions. Couple of quite specific questions, but I'll jump into them. One of the questions is how do you have a risk and issues register in your project toolkit? Are you okay to just talk about some of your what you generally have in your blueprint or project toolkit?
Yes. We've got a recent issue register in the project toolkit. So that's a quite handy tool to use for each project. And they can log it, and we then can service it into program level if people want to escalate it into different escalation level for different audience to look. So yes, we do have the registers.
Cool. And there's a question as well about how many blueprints have you set up in Control Center, and do you use multi-tier? So I'll just clarify what multi-tier is. Multi-tier is where you have a program level, and then you can have a project level, and you want to roll out programs and projects. So it's a more complex hierarchical level within Control Center. But yeah, just interested.
At the moment, I only did one Control Center, but I'm in the process of building another one. So we are still building out the individual artifacts first. It is multi-tiered, so we do have a roll-up to program, roll-up to kind of business portfolio sort of thing. And also the project will have different tiers as well. So that will kind of, when we set it up in the Control Center, we want to make sure that, which project tier does this project relates to, and then customize the type of templates needed for this particular tier.
And just to clarify, that's something that you've really taken advantage of in advance by building an extra blueprint and using the multi. Question here, which is the percentage completed formula driven? Talking about the schedule which changes to red, and also do project leaders game the system? So
what does game the system mean?
I think perhaps Andrew, this is a question from Andrew, and he's meaning, do they just change the percentage done to make it look like they're
no, the percentage complete is formula driven. So based on the task underneath it, it's automatically calculate how much percentage you then complete. Then obviously we can set up custom formula as well if you want to calculate the percentage complete, which means you can lock the column so people can't change it. It just depending on if someone say, yeah, I've completed this, that means the percentage is X. So that can be done. So it depends on, the type of project you're working on and how you want to use Smartsheet. There's always ability to set formula and lock the column to present the data correctly.
Yeah, awesome. And last but not least, before we hand over to Bree, what is your favorite Smartsheet hack?
Oh, it's always a difficult one to answer because it changes every time. As soon as I come up with new theme, that will be my favorite one. But at the moment, my favorite is the automation side of things, where I can copy rows to a historical data sheet, for example. So I can have like an update sheet, and when it's finished and it's completed and submitted, the row is being copied into another sheet. So I can separate the historical data sheet and archive it away without changing the main sheet for people to use. And I found that really handy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ivy, for answering these questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to any other questions on the chat or in the Q&A, but I'm now going to hand over to Bree to do a bit of a demo and a bit of a deeper dive into exactly what we've just been discussing.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, share my screen. So hi, everyone. My name is Brianna. I'm a sales engineer at Smartsheet here in Sydney. I've been using Smartsheet for many years. I actually started off as a customer. Much like many of you all, I got shared to a sheet and got really curious and just started out building out my own solutions. So now luckily I get to do that full time here. And I really love attending these user groups and chatting to other people who are curious. Love building solutions and innovating, and say things in the chat like learning is addictive. So thank you so much to Ivy as well for sharing all of that. That was just so great to see. As you saw with Ivy, they have a solution that's been built running in Smartsheet, and that solution relies on a product that we have, which is called Control Center. So today I get to show you a demo of Control Center and talk you through how that works within Smartsheet. So firstly, what is Control Center? Control Center builds on the core value of Smartsheet to deliver project consistency, visibility, and processes at scale by automating project creation, managing change, and aggregating portfolio analytics. So when you have a repeatable process that requires the same types of Smartsheet templates each time, we can use Control Center to automate the process of creating and populating those templates, as well as automatically producing the reports and dashboards across the portfolio rolled up. In addition, Control Center also allows you to edit your projects in bulk by applying global updates across many projects at once. That was one of the benefits that Ivy called out as being really, really helpful when implementing Control Center. So just before I get into the demo itself, let me explain a few things about how Control Center works. So within Control Center, firstly, you set up a blueprint. The blueprint is a package of templates that are needed to manage a particular type of work or project. So a project can be anything. That could be a marketing campaign or a customer implementation, the construction of a new building, whatever the work that you do is, it's the package of templates that you need in order to deliver that work. So in your blueprint, you will have a combination of sheets, reports, and dashboards. So your sheets could be things like your project plan, a RAID log or risk tracker, maybe a budget tracker, anything along those lines in your sheets. And then you have a layer of reporting. So the reporting would be something like a report that looks at your project plan and shows just the overdue tasks. Or maybe it looks at the RAID log and only shows you the high priority or red items. Then next, you've got your project dashboard. So this is where we can aggregate information from within that project, from the sheets, drop in our reports, show metrics, and just visualize the information about that project. This creates a nice landing page for your teams so that they can quickly access the information about that project and see what needs actioning straight away. Also very helpful to share with maybe other stakeholders who are less involved with the project, but need to be able to quickly understand the health of that project. Lastly, in our blueprint is the automation side of things. So what type of standard automations do you want in your project every time you spin up a new one? That could be alerting the person who's assigned when a new task gets added, or maybe letting the project manager know if a milestone falls behind time. So that's the blueprint. Again, the package of templates that is required every time you spin up a new project. So to put this in the flow of how this would work in Control Center, firstly, you'll have some kind of intake process for new projects. So collecting ideas for a new project, whether that's from individuals in your organization or from leaders, but some sort of central sheet to be able to collect the ideas for new projects and prioritize them. Once you've actually decided to kick off a project, that's when Control Center comes in. So this is where we're going to automate the creation of that blueprint over and over consistently each time with all of those templates set up. And we're also going to populate them with the information that we've already collected within our prioritization. Next is the portfolio reporting. So again, every time that we spin up a new project, it's automatically rolling up into our portfolio or multiple portfolios so that the new project information is landing on that rolled up view. And the last piece here is the global updates and bulk edits feature. So the ability to apply global updates across all of your live projects. So of course, once you accumulate many projects in Smartsheet and you might decide that you need to add a new column into your project plan, it would be time consuming to go through and add that individually. With Control Center, you can do that in bulk, as well as archiving rules. So having a lot of governance around what actually happens when a project is completed to make sure that you're securely closing your projects. Okay, so now the fun part, I'm going to get into the demo. So I'm starting off here with that intake process. I just have a simple form here set up, which is a really nice way of collecting requests for new projects. You don't have to use a form, but it's definitely a nice way to collect information from people across the organization who might not be Smartsheet users. So you can customize exactly what information you're collecting. I'm taking inspiration from Ivy's background, and I'm calling this the Sunny Beach Project. And I'm just going to align this to Australia, put it into the finance unit and add any other information required and go ahead and submit it. So now that's been submitted, and we're going to have that landing into our project intake sheet. So this is what I mentioned before, where you're going to have this list of all of the projects which have been submitted and require some kind of prioritization. What you track against these projects, it's completely up to you. In my case, I have information about their region, the lead, etc. But I can go ahead and work on collecting the information that's going to drive this project and eventually mark it as approved. So now that my project is approved, I'm ready to actually spin this up in Control Center. So moving over into Control Center, this is what it looks like. And I can go ahead and click Create Project. And here we can see I have 3 separate blueprints. So that triangle, again, representing 3 different types of work. And this is a small project. So I'm just going to click Small Project. And what we can see here is that it's going to spin up a brand new version of a project plan, a risk and issue tracker, project metrics, a nice dashboard for my project, and a few other sheets and reports. You also have the ability, if you want, to tack on some optional templates. So this allows you to be quite flexible. So maybe you have some slight differences in the projects, and this one we do want to include a lessons learned tracker, whereas these ones are going to be required for all projects. So now I get to the portion where I actually select the project I'm kicking off. And what we can see is the Sunny Beach project is available. I can select that, and that list is only going to give me the approved projects. So you're never at risk of accidentally starting a project that's not gone through the approval process. And it's going to pre-fill my templates with all of that information that I collected up front about who's the project manager, what are the due dates, etc. I can control how it gets shared out. And then lastly, I just click Create. So what's happening now is it's going to spin up a brand new version of that blueprint. It's going to pre-fill it with all the information like the project name, the project manager, the start dates, etc., populating the templates automatically. It's going to share it with the appropriate levels of access to the right people. And it's going to roll it up into the project portfolio or portfolios. So I'll see it automatically on my dashboards. So this is done, and I can go ahead and click open, and I'll see my brand new project where it's automatically populated the name of my project, which is assigned to the finance department, the person who's leading it, and the clean version of each of the templates ready for me to get started with. So now that that is done, as I work away on this project, marking tasks or milestones as completed, that can contribute to the overall percentage completed of my project, for example, rolling that up into the portfolio where we can get metrics across all of the projects that we're working on. So for example, at the portfolio level, we can see we have a total of 74 projects, which are divided across simple and complex. And I've just broken mine down by some key departments and business units, so across finance, IT, and HR. But this is an excellent tool that you can use to share with your leadership or those who need to see that aggregated view of everything that's going on within the portfolio. You'd also be able to drill down as well. So if I wanted to specifically look at my finance projects, there are 9. I can click here to see a dashboard of those 9 of that particular segment. As I mentioned as well, of course, a key feature of Control Center is the ability to do global updates. So as Ivy mentioned, as you are growing, it's very likely that your templates might need some changes applied to them. Rather than going into each of your live projects and having to make that, that change manually, you can push the changes out into each one of your existing projects. So we've got the ability to do a few global updates. I've already mentioned adding a new column. You can also modify an existing column, adding more profile data or metadata, as you heard Ivy and Adam talking about earlier. Finding and replacing. This is an excellent one for, let's say, somebody has changed or the name of a project has changed. We can find that item and replace it in bulk, updating your reports, and even updating your dashboards.
Perfect. Thanks. Thanks, Bri.
Sure, no problem. Just one really quick thing to cover off the difference between doing this in Control Center versus manually. Of course, you can use the templates, but there's some key benefits that you'll gain by doing it in Control Center, saving time, not having to manually create everything, reducing the amount of admin and double handling, allowing your resources to focus on the work that they're really good at. Eliminating error-prone work. If you're manually going in and making updates, that could lead to some accidental mishaps. And then the ability to enforce governance and improve the quality and consistency across all of your projects. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Bri. Really, really great overview there of Control Center. As an open Q&A, just one of the questions which comes up a lot is, outside of needing to deploy lots of projects, what are the typical reasons why someone might move to Control Center to doing things manually in Smartsheet?
So outside of having a high volume of projects?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say that there are a few reasons. One of them would be kind of what I just recapped. So the ability to enforce governance around the projects. So if you want to ensure that each one of your projects does follow this standard framework, you can have a lot more control over that using something like Control Center. The ability to automatically roll up into a portfolio as well. When you have consistency and when you have the automation, you can make sure that that reporting layer at the top is going to be accurate. So that your stakeholders can be reviewing the information live as well. And yeah, the elimination of error-prone work as well. I'd say that's another one. Having to go in and manually do cell links or manually rename all of your templates can be both time-consuming and error-prone.
If someone has a project where maybe they're only deploying it 4 or 5 times a month, but there's a lot of assets, is that something as well that Control Center can be a good fit for?
Yep, that's a good point, Adam. So if your template set has a lot of different assets in it. Control Center is a really good tool to automate that. Again, it's saving time rather than doing it manually, and just making sure that happens a lot more quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, and one of the it's a bit of a leading question, but it's my user group, so I can ask it. Is some customers often have trouble making sure that the right assets are being shared to the right people. Is that something as well that Control Center is good for helping with?
That's right. Yeah. So when you set up your blueprint, you can actually select what level of sharing happens to each one of your templates. And you can even go as far as saying, when I set up a new blueprint, I want to ensure that the person in the project manager column automatically gets shared in a specific way.
I think there's nothing more annoying than receiving an update for something, for a program, project, or task which is already completed. Is there any possibility that Control Center could help solve me annoying people with automations which are no longer relevant?
So can you ask that again? Sorry.
There's nothing more annoying than receiving an automation, an update request, or please update your task for a project which is already completed. Is that something that Control Center would be able to help me with?
Yes, so that comes into the governance and like global update side of things. You have the ability to enforce what happens when you archive a project. So one of those features would be disabling all of the automations so that you don't get a kind of a ghost notification on a closed project.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. Are there any questions in the chat? Otherwise, I'm going to continue asking my leading questions. But more than happy to. Bree, as we've got time before any other questions are answered, and I know this is something kind of we touched on when I was speaking to Ivy. You showed that there was a program option in a blueprint. Can you talk about what multi-tier is and why that might be relevant?
Yep. So multi-tier is a way of structuring your control center so that rather than just rolling your projects up into one portfolio, you can actually align them to a middle tier or multiple middle tiers. So for example, you might have the overall project management office portfolio, but then you want to automatically break out the reporting by the department or by let's say by a customer, and then all of the customers' projects land within that dashboard, and it automates the creation of the reporting at that middle layer. So you're not having to constantly update your reports and your dashboards, and you can also very easily spin up a new segment of that tier.
Awesome. Boris, you've asked a question in the Q&A, which is anything on tables. I'm not too sure of the context on that question. If you could provide a bit more context for that question. Is it about data tables, or I'm not too sure. There's also a very specific question here from Kerry, which is how do you delete a contact? Again, a bit specific.
For the question about deleting a contact, would that be like a user in Smartsheet, perhaps?
I think it's talking about maybe talking about how do you remove a user from lots of projects or contacts, maybe global updates again with profile data updates.
Yep, you could do a find and replace, or if it's more related to their account access, it can be done through the admin center. Probably need a little more context on that question.
Okay, and Boris's question is, it's a new feature he's heard of, data tables. Would you be able to just give a very brief overview? Probably need a whole separate user group on data table, but just of what is Bree?
Yep. So data table is a table of information that you can store in Smartsheet, and then you can reference that information in a sheet. So a good example might be, let's say that you wanted to import a list of all of your transactions from your ERP, all the expenses into your data table, and you store it there up to 2 million rows of data. And then in your project sheet, you can create a connection from that sheet into the data table just to pull back any of the rows that match that project number, for example. That way you've got a list specifically of the expenses to that project, but you've got it in Smartsheet, and it's referencing information from your ERP.
Awesome. So large data sets like project financials over a very long period might be a good option. Got a question here which says, regarding ongoing maintenance of assets under Control Center, is this restricted to the options that were shown on the screen? And I think it might be helpful here to talk about the difference between doing a global update and updating the core template, which drives the Control Center.
Yep. So there's two things here. A global update is going to push out a change. I think there's the 5 that I showed you on the screen. Push a change to all live projects. If you don't want to affect the existing projects, you only want to make this change or add a new template or to all future projects, all you have to do is update the base templates and all new projects will reflect that change.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree. And got a question here, which is, can you explain the difference between having multiple blueprint summary per blueprint as opposed to having multi-tier blueprints? In which scenario would you use one way or the other? I'll probably preface this first of all by saying that this will be very use case specific. There'll be times when we want to have separate programs, or there's times when multi-tier will make sense. Do you have any generic tips? I feel that like this is a bit like the everything is generic financial advice. I think this is financial advice disclaimers type of things, but anything general you can say there, Bree. Please do reach out to your rep or customer success manager for more detailed answers on this.
Yeah, we'd love to chat to you about this and actually understand your use case. But in general, let me bring up an example really quickly. I think having a graphic is kind of helpful. If you can just bear with me 1 second. Let's see. Actually, I'll just try to explain it that maybe more confusing. So basically, if you can have multiple blueprints which represent a different type of work. So let's say that you've got, if you're running an agile project, you might need a whole bunch of templates that you don't need if you're doing a waterfall project, or likewise, your marketing team run their projects quite differently. So that in itself requires its own blueprint. So you can have many different blueprints within one tier of Control Center. Where adding a second tier becomes really helpful is when, again, you can have many different blueprints depicting types of projects. But you want to roll up into a specific segment. So let's use the example of client implementations. So we can use our own implementation team at Smartsheet. So we've got Smartsheet as the portfolio. And then every time that we have a new customer, maybe we want to we automatically create a new reporting tier for that customer. And then when the customer has a project, we can select which blueprint for the type of project that it is, and it's automatically rolling up into that customer's tier of reporting. In this way, using multi-tier, you can both make it easier to spin up a new client, but also spin up new projects in the different styles.
So, Bree, can I ask a question there? If I am going to be running lots of projects, which are going to be, different small, medium, large projects, slightly different templates, but within those, I'm going to need them to roll. I'm going to be running lots of different programs or work streams. Is that where I'm going to likely need to have a multi-tier setting so that I can capture which program or work stream those all fall under?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you have any tips for engaging stakeholders who have limited or no Smartsheet understanding for a task update, i.e. a subcontractor or boomer? I'm not going to use the boomer terminology, I'll get cancelled now, but do you have any tips for that, Bree?
Tips for engaging them?
Tips for ways to engage those stakeholders who using Smartsheet for task updates. Like, is it better to use automations? Is it better to use emails? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends. There's lots of ways. I think one thing that is super powerful is just using an update request. If you're not familiar with that, it's an automation where it can send an update request to somebody's email or even to Teams or Slack. And it's going to specifically ask them to update the cell or cells that you need them to. And they can do it without even logging into Smartsheet, but their information goes straight back into the sheet. So that's one really good way to involve people who maybe are not using Smartsheet or resistant or something like that. Having reports for them on a dashboard where they can just go to the dashboard and that they see exactly the information that relates to them specifically is another really good way. So you're personalizing it. And yeah, those would be the two that I would recommend.
What about work apps?
Yep. That's the other thing too. So you can create personalized alongside, like I mentioned with the dashboards, where you can personalize it. You can put that into an app called Work Apps. Again, very tailored view for that role of person. And they can use that app to just very specifically see the information that's been curated for them rather than needing to go in and look through their folders. That's also works really nicely on a phone. So if there's somebody like a contractor who's out in the field, then it's easily accessible by their phone.
Thank you so much, Bria. Really appreciate you doing such a great job on the demo and answering the questions as well.
No problem.
So just want to highlight a few resources and upcoming events here. We do have our regular Smartsheet APAC user group. We have one for new users on the 24th of November. As I've said all the way through, please reach out to your Smartsheet account team or email customersuccess@smartsheet.com. Ivy talked earlier about how she's really leveraged Elise for having power hours, user groups. It's something that if you do have a dedicated CSM can be very, very powerful in helping with the change management process. Want to give a quick shout out to a couple of upcoming user groups. We've got the virtual ANZ user group introduction to brand folder on the 30th of November. Amazing digital asset management tool used by some of the largest companies in the world. Find out about AI tagging and all the kind of weird and wonderful stuff it does. So please tell your marketing friends about this. We have an Auckland user group in-person event on the 1st of December. Please save the date. We are starting to do in-person events, and it'd be great to see some of our users. Same with the Sydney user group in-person event. That'll be in late February, date to be confirmed. And we will also do another virtual ANZ user group in March. Again, date to be confirmed. But we really appreciate any feedback that you have, what you found useful. If there's any topics that you'd like us to cover. If you are interested in presenting at a future user group, please reach out to us at usergroup@smartsheet.com or speak to your Smartsheet rep or customer success manager. And last but not least, looking for an expert help or want to improve your usage of Smartsheet, contact your rep, contact your customer success manager, or failing that, please email customersuccess@smartsheet.com. So thank you all for joining us. I really just want to take a moment and thank Ivy for a fantastic Q&A and presentation, and also Bree for her demonstration. And also thanks for the engagement and questions all the way through. It was a really engaging session, and I hope that lots of people got lots out of this.
Shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. You've been working, but you're flirting.